Good evening. I know that we are not able to meet for our normal midweek connection, and with the snowstorm and the uncertainty of how much snow and ice, and especially with the temperatures going down overnight and not wanting to risk people being out on the roads after dark with as much snow and ice that there might be out there, we decided to make the decision and to play it safe tonight and to postpone our annual business meeting to next Wednesday and to cancel our service this evening, our midweek connection and Kids for Truth, as well as the Deaf Ministry Bible Study. And we'll miss being together this evening, but I will have the prayer list with the email that you should be receiving along with the link to this video. And then also you can see the updates regarding some prayer requests, as Vern Jones has been able to come home, and we're thankful for that. We'll continue to pray for him as he recovers, regains his strength after battling a kidney infection. And then Joey Pruitt, he was at the doctor yesterday, as he's had quite a bit of abdominal pain over the last few days. And so hoping that everything will check out okay for him, as he is just getting back to school for a new semester. I do want to take a few moments and have just a brief devotional thought. We have been looking at Bible characters on Wednesday nights, and I do want to just take a few moments and talk about a character from Mark 9. This is the man with the demon-possessed son, and we are not going to take the time to read through this entire passage, but in Mark 9:14 through 29, we see that there is a multitude that has gathered around Jesus, and someone out of that multitude in verse 17, being this demon-possessed, the father of this demon-possessed son, he spoke up and he said, "Master, I've brought unto thee my son, which hath a dumb spirit." In other words, this demon was causing his son to not be able to speak, to be mute. And we see in verse 18 that wheresoever he taketh him, he teareth him, and he foameth and gnasheth with his teeth and pineth away. And then we see down further in verse number 20, and they brought him unto him, they brought the child to Jesus, and when Jesus saw him, it said, straightway the spirit tear him. Obviously, upon coming into the presence of Jesus, the demon reacted, and it caused the boy in verse 20 to fall on the ground and to wallow, foaming. And then we see in verse 22 that this demon would even cause this boy to be cast into the fire and into waters to try to kill him. And so we see this demon-possessed boy, and then we see a desperate father. The father called out in verse 17, and then he describes what's been going on with his son. And then we see in verse 24, and straightway the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief. And of course, we often have that same thought that this father did. We believe, we have faith, and yet it just doesn't seem to be enough. It seems that we still have a nagging doubt. It still seems that we are struggling as human beings to truly, fully, and only trust Christ in whatever circumstance, whatever difficulty, whatever trial that we might have. And here we see this father in a desperate case looking to Jesus and saying, I believe, help thou my unbelief. Help me to overcome this unbelief. if there is any way that I am not learning what I should be learning, if there's any way that my doubts are preventing you from performing a miracle to heal my son, if there's any way that my unbelief is preventing the work of God in my life, please take that away. Help me, help my son. Please do a miracle, deliver. Even I can't help but think, though I don't know the exact spiritual condition of this father, I can't help but think of a Paul in 2 Corinthians 12 who prayed for Christ to take away his thorn in the flesh, and he prayed 3 times, and Christ did not take it away. And yet Paul answered that God's grace is sufficient, and that his strength is made perfect in our weakness. So I can't help but even think here, as this father cries out, that he would even be saying to Jesus, give me the grace that I need, but would you please heal my son? And we see that there is a definite healing. The demon is cast out. In verse 26, it was a very difficult thing that happened, but obviously Jesus, being God, had power over the demon, and the demon came out, and it left the boy as if he were dead, as he was as one dead, inasmuch that many said he is dead. But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. And when he was coming to the house, his disciples asked him privately, why could not we cast him out? And he said unto them, this kind can come forth by nothing but by prayer and fasting. What a lesson for the disciples, as they saw a father in desperation crying out, even asking for Christ to overcome any nagging doubts. And yet the disciples were not able to cast this demon out, and their faith obviously needed to be grown and to be strengthened, and they needed to depend upon Christ in what would seem like impossible situations, humanly speaking, but yet Jesus had given them the power to cast out demons, and yet they were unable to do so in this circumstance. And it showed their lack of belief. It showed the weakness of their faith, and what an important lesson that they had to learn. So as I just walked through that passage, we saw the demon-possessed son. We saw a desperate father turning to Christ. We saw the disciples being a disappointment. And there are times where we fail in our faith and our trust, and there is a disappointment. Not that God doesn't love us, not that God doesn't care, not that God doesn't want us to learn, but there is a disappointment when we do not obey, when we do not live in faith, and we do not trust, and we're not willing to learn the lesson that God has for us. Jesus made that direct statement in verse 23, and we go back again to verse 23 there, and we see Jesus said unto him, if thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. And what a wonderful statement to that father, where Jesus wanted to heal his son, but he also wanted the father to have faith, to trust him. And no doubt Jesus was concerned about the father's spiritual condition as well as the son. And obviously it took the power of God to cast out that demon. But in doing so, Jesus was helping the father, helping the son, obviously, and also teaching the disciples an important lesson. So we see the desire for faith, as we talked about just a few minutes ago, with the father saying, help down my unbelief. And then we see a definite healing. Only Christ could have cast out that demon by the power of God. The disciples, only Christ cast out the demon. The disciples could have, but only by the power of God. But they did not believe, and with faith and with trust, they did not, and therefore they showed their weakness of their faith, their lack of confidence in the power of God, whatever we might want to call it. But God, his power, cast out that demon, healed the boy, and obviously Jesus Christ, being God, claiming the power of God, and by the power of God, that boy was healed. And I can't help but also think of a spiritual healing that took place in the life of that father, in the life of that son, and then the lesson, of course, for the disciples as well. And that would be the deep lesson that we just talked about. So we see a man who, like us, in a desperate need, going to Jesus, and with faith that had its weakness, that had its lack, we, like that father, should come to Christ. And when sometimes we are at our wits' end, when we have nothing left, we find that Jesus is more than enough. And we have to trust him, we have to look to him, and we have to cry out to him. And sometimes we're like the disciples, and we have to have that lesson. We have to have maybe a little bit of discipline. We have to have a little bit of a deep lesson to once again penetrate our hearts and remind us that God is doing a work, and he's conforming us into his image. And by the power of God, we can overcome, we can learn the lesson, we can receive the grace of God for whatever need we have, and we can see God do a work that only he can, just like we saw here with Jesus in this passage, casting out that demon and healing that boy. So that is our devotional thought for tonight. A few upcoming events, a reminder about the security team meeting on Saturday. We still are planning the church pitch-in and afternoon service on Sunday, and we look forward to our time together. And Brother Earl will be speaking in the afternoon service. Valentine's banquet server meeting is a week from Sunday on the 5th after the morning service. Building and Grounds Committee meeting is scheduled for Monday, the 6th of February at 6:30. Valentine's banquet on the 11th, and tickets will still be on sale on this coming Sunday as well as on the 5th. And then Ladies Bible Study has been moved to February 21st, that Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. Again, the prayer list will be connected to the email as well as a link to this video. And then if we could continue to pray for one another and remember Vern Jones at this time, Joey Pruitt, as well as many others that we are praying for. We'll miss being together tonight, but we look forward to being together on Sunday, security team on Saturday, and look forward to worshiping the Lord together as a church family on this Sunday. Thank you for joining this video, and I hope that this short devotional thought has been a help and an encouragement to us. We look forward to seeing you on Sunday.